I'm Matt,
And I'm Rissa.
and we're here to coach you in how to have an exceptional life.
And today we're talking about what makes Matt a different coach from other coaches. So, Matt, why should they pick you?
My mom says I have a winning personality.
Matt, so besides your winning personality, what else sets you apart from other coaches?
Well, there's a couple of key differences, and I always tell people you want to interact with whoever you want to form a coaching agreement with, just like you should talk to different psychologists or psychiatrists before you enter into an agreement with them. But the things that make me distinct from other coaches is that I am available in between sessions and that we have a set agreed period of time. So when I work with people, we work for a 3-month period. Most coaches, you work on a weekly basis until one of you dies. I don't like that. I think it sets up a poor power dynamic in which you have to come to me and say, hey, I think I'm all fixed now and I don't want to pay you anymore. Setting up a 3-month period gives me enough time to go through all of the fundamental foundations of coaching, and we get to work on our game for the second half, and there's a defined stopping point. I think it's important that people have beginning, middles, and ends in everything, especially coaching.
And I think it's really great that you're emphasizing like what makes you distinct because, like you said, people might find that your style isn't right for them, but then other people find that that's exactly what they're looking for. So it's great to understand what a coach is like and know that that doesn't make them wrong or right. They're just maybe not right for you.
Correct. And I really want people for 6 months because the first 3 months is getting in all the distinctions, practicing them a little bit, go through the first, your first game. And then for the second 3 months, if I could have that with people, it's the game, just the game, using all of the distinctions that we have gone through. But it's hard enough to get people to commit for 3 months, let alone 6 months. But honestly, after 6 months, I don't want to be with you anymore. I don't want to be your coach for the rest of your life because the whole point of coaching, in my opinion, is you're able to handle things when they occur on your own. You're able to use the distinctions that you've practiced. I don't want a setup where you're coming to me once a week for the rest of your life. That doesn't do any good for you or me, in my opinion. Now, that said, after I work with somebody for 6 months, it is common that I will work with them 2, 3, 4 years down the road, or that we'll have an occasional check-in call. That's fine. But for me, the idea that I would see you every week for the rest of your life plays far too much into that you are not whole, perfect, complete, that there is something fundamentally broken or flawed about you that needs to be constantly worked on.
Well, it takes away the power of that individual. Like they now have to live their life with you being part of it as, kind of a crutch for them or something that supports them instead of being able to handle life on their own with the tools that you've given them.
Exactly. Very well said. In that 3-month period, it also affords me the ability to tell my clients that I'm not on call, right? But that I'm available for them in between. You get me as your coach from the start of our first call to the end of our final call, and I am your coach all the way in between. I love sports analogies, right? And for me, this is the equivalent of in a football game, the coach is on the sidelines, and while other things are happening, they can give feedback in real time. They can talk to the quarterback if the defense is on the field and be able to say, this is what I'm seeing. This is how things are going. It would be a much odder game to me if you could only talk to your team in between the quarters. That's it. Other than that, good luck. You're on your own. Hope you did your work in the off season. It just doesn't work. Life doesn't happen on Thursday at 10 o'clock every week schedule. Stuff happens in between that time, and I think it's important that people be able to reach out to their coach. Now, that doesn't mean I'm on call, right? If you call me at 3 a.m., I'm not going to answer the phone. And if I am in a situation where I am awake at 3 a.m., you do not want my 3 a.m. coaching. That is not going to be useful, right? But I'll return your call in the morning, or you can send me a text, or you can send me an email. I want to be available during that 3-month period, and that's not a promise that I could make without having a defined start and end point.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you've talked a lot about like the structure of your program. What are some of the more insider details of what makes you different? Like the way that you handle your clients, the way that you approach coaching them?
I make it very clear to everybody that asks me about this, I am not your normal life coach, especially not in Austin, Texas, right? Coach is not a protected term. Anybody can call themselves a coach, which has benefits and detriments. I'm not going to talk to you about crystals. I'm not going to talk to you about your energy. We're just not going to cover that. We're going to have rational conversations about why are you the way you are? Why am I the way I am? What are the similarities? What are the things that we share in common as human beings? But what makes you distinct and unique, separate from me? And why is that? We're not going to talk about your mom, except that we're going to talk about that why I do the thing I do today is because it paid off for me a year ago, 2 years ago. And the reason I did it then is because it paid off. Everything does regress back to the beginning, but it's all inside of the guise of my brain does things to help keep me safe, to help keep me comfortable, to help keep the world predictable. And it does an excellent job of that. It does it automatically. But we have a prefrontal cortex. The beauty of being conscious is not being conscious. It's that you can be conscious that you are conscious. Meaning, whereas my cat hears me clink a glass bowl, it doesn't matter why I clink the glass bowl, coming in at 1,000,000 miles an hour because it could be food, right? The thing that separates us from my cat is that I have a prefrontal cortex and the ability to figure out, is this really likely to be food? Is it damaging my relationship with this person that I come flying in at 1,000,000 miles an hour every time they pull something out of the drawer, et cetera, et cetera. The ability to know that we have a brain and to be able to act independently of the reptilian part of our brain.
So if someone like really enjoys kind of like horoscopes or crystals, like that could be a coach they could find. It's just maybe not you.
You can find about 1,000,000,000 of them. Yes. And it is one of those things. There's nothing wrong with that. One of the hardest lessons there was for me to learn as a coach was, you know, nothing I say is the truth. I don't have the right answers. I don't even believe the things that I say, right? I just know that my life goes better when I behave like I believe the things that I say. But I don't have stone tablets. I'm not Charlton Heston coming down from the mount. But then being able to remember that when I hear somebody else coach in a way that is not the way that I coach, that's not wrong either. It can't be, right? You have to find the person that works well with you and your view on life and your specific personality type, right? And I have clients that remind me of me. They're smart, they're rational, they don't want to talk about woo-woo, and they're generally arrogant and think they know everything, et cetera, et cetera. I have that style, and that's the perfect client for me to work with.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's really helpful because sometimes people try something like therapy or coaching, and if they don't have a good experience with the first person, they think that that represents therapy or coaching or whatever that activity is,
Yeah.
whereas that just represents that specific person's style
Yeah.
that you've reached out to.
Yeah, doctors are a great example, right? It takes one bad experience with a doctor, and then people are like, "I don't wanna go to the doctor anymore," and it's like, "No, that doctor did not work for you," or maybe that doctor was not a very good doctor, right? But you have to shop around to be able to find the person that you work well with. And that's why most coaches, if not all coaches, offer generally 30 minutes to 1 hour of a free call to be able to find out, do you work together? Because a coach doesn't want a client that they don't jibe with any more than a client wants a coach they don't jibe with.
Well, and the great thing about these videos is people can get a feel for your personality and your style of coaching and see if it works for them.
Yeah, it really is one of the reasons that I love getting to do this is how I am in person and how I coach and how I am on video is all the same thing. And it's real easy for people to go, I like that, or I really don't like that. In which case, please still like and subscribe, but you don't have to work with me.
And then, so you talked about like that they can have like an intro call, but I think you've also mentioned before that if they get started and they're not happy with it, you do a refund as well.
Yeah, that's one of the things. I'm not a big fan of contracts for many reasons. But if I'm working with somebody and it's just not working out, or they're not able to take the coaching, or there's something that is off between us and they don't want to continue, I'll just give them their money back, right? I think I've done this once, maybe twice in the last 15 years because it just doesn't come up very often. But if the relationship isn't working, then the relationship's not working. And as a coach, it's incumbent upon me to make sure that the relationship works in a way that works for both of us.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I think we've got a pretty good feel for what you're like as a coach and what makes you different from other coaches. Is there anything additional you would like to add?
So the other thing that I want to put in is that most coaches work on the same philosophy as as a therapist model, which is if I come to you and you're my therapist, and you're like, what do you want to talk about today? And I'm like, nothing. And you're like, no, let's talk about something. And I'm like, no, I really don't want to. Then we're going to stare at each other for the next, 48 minutes of our session because a therapist is not intended to prompt their patient, is not, to guide them. I don't do things that way. It's not that I prompt people, right? But for the first 3 months that we work together, we're working a program. I know what we're going to talk about on week 1, week 2, week 3, and week 4. As we progress further along, I'll pick and choose based on what I think is going to make a difference. But week 1, we're talking about the ground rules. We're talking about the idea of responsibility. What does responsibility mean inside of our coaching program? There's a video. You should be able to see it. Scroll up or down. And then they enact responsibility. Now, they do that inside of their life. So it is not just cookie cutter. We want to talk about responsibility as it applies to the client, be that in a relationship, be that in a job situation, wherever it is. But we've got to start with responsibility because that's the foundation of everything else we do. We know what we're going to talk about, how it's going to be applied and where it's going to hit is unique. And I have those 12 weeks to get the fundamentals in, to get all of the things that, in my opinion, are necessary for somebody to practice personal development ongoingly. And I know that we're going to get to those. So
I think it's really great that you mix together structure and flexibility so that there's not just, I don't know what we're going to do. It could be anything. There is a plan, but you're very flexible with the plan. You can work around like what's more useful for people, what is better to focus on.
Yeah, and sometimes we hit integrity in week 11, and sometimes we hit integrity in week 3 because that's what there is to address, right? And I think that's part of what makes a good coach is being able to adapt. Anybody can coach somebody who's easily coachable. I think great coaches coach those who are hard to coach. And, not that I want a lot of clients that are hard to coach. I love easy clients, right? But that's one of the things is how do you adapt to what the person is dealing with, what it is that they want to get out of the coaching relationship, what is their goal, dream, desire, etc.
I think another thing that set you apart as a coach for me was that you have a game that is part of the coaching. Do you want to talk about what that is and how it works?
Yeah, so about halfway through our coaching, everybody creates a game. And the distinction of a game is that X is more important than Y, right? In a football game, it is more important that I get the ball across the goal more times than my opponent gets the ball across the goal. Everybody is playing games in their life. It's more important that I have a better lawn than my neighbor. It's more important that I feed my family than that they don't get fed. We play all kinds of games. We just don't generally define them intentionally, right? About halfway through, my client picks something that they say is important, something they want. It can be running their first marathon. It can be getting a job. It can be having a relationship. Somebody who is 10 years into their marriage said they wanted the best week of their marriage. It can be anything. It doesn't have to be grandiose. It just has to be, for our purposes, something that it's challenging to them and that is fun. And then the last 6 weeks, all of the distinctions that we cover are used inside of winning that game, getting the thing that they said was important. And I think that's a real neat thing for clients. I tell them, I'm trying to teach you how to fish, right? Feed a man a fish, you teach a man, everybody knows what it is, right? But I'm trying to teach people how to fish, but along the way, we're always going to catch some fish. And for me, the game is a big example of that because people get to practice in reality going for this thing that is going to be difficult to achieve, but that is very important to them. And we get to see, where does the machine kick in? Where do we use the distinctions? Where were we afraid to push too far? Where did we push too far and it didn't work out, etc.? I think it would be great for people to hear what your game was.
So I've had 2 games, but one of them was falling in love with flexibility. And so my game was to have measurable results, that I could do the middle splits, that I had my front splits back. And, there's like a measurable things that show that I won or lost my game. But like the point of the game was that I had also an attitude change with this thing, that I wanted to enjoy it and be excited about it and not just do it begrudgingly. And so finding ways to make that happen, it be part of my daily routine and doing things that are fun. And
I think that's a great example, right? Because, being able to do a handstand or a middle split may not be for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And it may not be this grandiose, thing that is worth doing coaching for. But that wasn't the point of the coaching. The point of it was that you have the ability to then try it in real time so that you can use what you learned about what does work, what doesn't work, what motivates you, what doesn't motivate you in the rest of your life. So I think that's a perfect example of a game.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode where we talked about what set Matt apart from other coaches.
Yeah. Make sure you go visit the website, www.anexceptionallife.com. You can sign up for our newsletter there so that you're the first to hear about things like the 24 hours of coaching and other videos that we release. As always, your time and your attention are yours to give, and you've given them generously today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.